Welcome to the Navigating BOMA Best webinar series. This is our first episode in the series for the BOMA Best SMART program. In this webinar, we will cover the area of security and safety focus. I'm your moderator, Jaden Petta. I'm a program coordinator here at BOMA Canada. Joining us today are our two speakers, Stephen Refford and Charles Bélanger. BOMA Canada would like to acknowledge that its office is located in Toronto and on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credit. Starting off, we would like to begin with an overview on BOMA Best SMART. The BOMA Best SMART program is a certification program and management tool that provides a roadmap on the analytics and artificial intelligence, cyber and physical security, data management and connectivity, health and well-being, sustainability, and more. BOMA Best SMART, launched in April 2023, is a program for existing buildings, recognizing what has already been implemented as opposed to what is being planned. This helps owners and managers plan and operate their buildings in a manner that drives sustainability through smart technologies. It aims to be an educational tool to provide a pathway to continuous performance improvement, and has also launched on our new BOMA Best Hub, an online platform and tool to complete the SMART assessment, track certifications, and report on building and portfolio performance. All asset classes are eligible for BOMA Best. Buildings are eligible for a specific asset class if more than 75% of the building that belongs to that particular asset class and meets minimum floor requirements. The universal asset class is available for any type of buildings that are not categorized here on the screen, from aquariums to zoos and anything in between. BOMA Best does not certify new construction. A building must be in operation for a minimum of 12 months to be eligible for BOMA Best. Details on our asset classes can be found on our BOMA Best website. BOMA Best SMART includes 5 areas of assessment called focus areas. New focus area topics include security and safety, operations and management, network and integration, end user experience, and reporting and analysis. Within each focus area, there are 5 baseline questions in total. These baseline questions are our mandatory minimum requirement questions that are necessary for any level certification. The 5 baseline questions are listed here. More information on what is required for the baseline practice questions can be found on our BOMA Best field guide on our website. BOMA Best SMART has 5 certification levels. Achieving a level is dependent on the score achieved after a verification is completed. The score thresholds for each level are listed here. Key point, regardless of any level achieved, the baseline practice questions must be answered with supporting documentation uploaded to the application. Now I'm going to hand it over to our speakers to dive further into the security and safety of BOMA Best SMART.
Okay, thank you, Jaden. Hello, everyone. I'm Stephen Refford. I'm the head of consulting at HBT. We are a trusted advisory team. We operate really on behalf of the client quite often. There's so much talk and so much focus on technology and the smart within buildings. Our role is really to help guide the clients through their journey for smart. We work in all sectors globally. We define, design, and deliver smart buildings. Something that we use quite often is this word appropriate, that it's really what's appropriate for the client. It's not about making every building the smartest building in town. It's about making something that's appropriate for the client. And ultimately for us, what we're trying to do is create better places to live and work and to be run efficiently. For a little bit of context there, I'm part of the BOMA Best Advisory Board, which is lovely. Thank you very much. I'm also part of the CIBSE, which is a UK-based organisation, and advisory board there. I'm also involved in the UCL, which is the University College in London, very kind of well-known university that are running a smart building and digital masters, and so I'm part of the advisory board there, helping to get the let's say the next generations out and aware of what it is. Smart Score AP, and I'm also part of the founding team that were working on the REBA, the Smart Plan of Work. So REBA is the Royal Institute of British Architects. They're the ones that define, in the UK at least, is the stage 1 to stage 7 of how we put a building together, how we construct buildings, new and existing. And we've defined something called the Smart Plan of Works, where we can start to help people understand more about what should they be asking at what stage, rather than leaving this all to the end. So I find that these things all overlap a certain amount, but hopefully we're driving the industry in the right way to ask the right questions, which I think is where BOMA comes in as well. It's really trying to drive the benefits in buildings and properties. Next slide, if you would, please. Okay, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time just sort of giving you an overview about what the topics are to do with security and safety. The idea being that what are the baseline questions? What are we trying to achieve here? What's the background? What's the light of why we're trying to do this? I'll spend a bit of time and a little bit of overview of some of the topics, but then I'll hand over to Charles, who's a verification professional, and we'll dive much more into the details of what they're looking for when they're verifying. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so let's get started with security. On the left-hand side, I've kind of given just a few words, and then on the right-hand side is something more relative to the questions will be asked. But for me, it's understanding the baseline, the background behind the security here. Fundamental is a word that I like to use with security. We're putting a lot of systems into buildings. We've been putting a lot of systems into buildings. We're putting them together. We're trying to connect them together to drive benefits and value. But this is all based on the fundamental of having a secure and safe network, shall we say, or a security system. So fundamental is really important there, that we get this implemented and defined quite early on. Reliable is again, if we're trying to deliver what we're trying to deliver for smart and achieve those benefits, we have to have reliability, and that's in security as well as in the communication side of things. On time, again, as we get more interoperability, it's really important that the information is where it should be when it needs to be, whether that'll be alerts as we get into the safety side of things or in just general operation. So having an on-time system running in the security side as well is massively important. The process and policy, or policy and procedure, we're putting a lot of these buildings together, either renovation or new, and really trying to drive a lot of this. What we do find though is that as soon as we get to the handover, a lot of the people lose interest in the building and move away. That's usually when the risk is the highest for security and the safety side of things. So for us, having policies, and we'll get into that a little bit more, having policies that are implemented and adhered to as we go on through the operation of the building is absolutely important, absolutely critical. And the last point on there for the security is documented. As sure Charles will tell you, for each of the questions that we go through, we need documentation, we need proof. And actually driving to get that documentation is a really good exercise to actually prove things are done the way that they should be. Okay, next one, if you would. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so safety. So previously we were talking a little bit about the security within the system. Here now we're talking about the safety. A couple of similar words, but a couple of new ones. When we're looking at safety, whether emergency responses, the equipment monitoring or detection, as we'll talk about, stability and reliability, massively important. We want to make sure that these things are working and are giving the information. We want to be able to rely on these systems, whatever it is that they bring to. On time, again, the same as the security, we want to make sure we get that information. If it's an alert, if it's a notification, if it's an escalation of information, we want to make sure it's on time. The fourth one on there is cognitive. So getting information is great, but getting information that gives value to us. What is that insight? What is it telling us? What can we use that information for? We've seen this kind of word cognitive used in other places, but especially in safety, it's massively important to understand. And again, the last point on there, the documentation, really understanding what the documents are showing that we are delivering what we say we're delivering in these buildings. Okay, next slide, if that's okay. Lovely, thank you. Right. So the baseline practices, I won't go through each one in absolute detail, but I think what's quite important here is on the baseline, we talk about the 2 points that are on there, the data privacy and the cybersecurity. If we look at the data privacy, I think we're kind of used to some of the conversation around this GDPR or some of the geographically relevant regulations that make sure we don't have any personal identification. I think what we're finding though is as we're getting systems more connected together, this becomes even more challenging sometimes to make sure that there's privacy. We're using cameras for occupancy. That's great, but we need to ensure that the data coming out of the camera is anonymized, that it's just information about the head count or the dwell times. It's not about the individual specifically. But then if you tie that in with an access system, now suddenly we have a chance that where maybe we get some kind of identification. So we need to be very careful in the design. Looking ahead future-wise, we're also starting to use sensors that can recognize an individual by their electrical impulses. So it's not face recognition, it's not card access, it's just understanding you standing in a room, we can recognize who you are. So again, understanding what the data privacy is locally to that project is massively important, and adhering to that so there's no personal information that can be shared. What we then get into on the cybersecurity is a policy. We mentioned it earlier, policies and procedures. We really talk about cybersecurity. Getting the buildings up and running, whether that's a new build or, as we say with BOMA, it's absolutely on the renovation of buildings and getting new life put into a building. That's a challenge at the best of times. But now we're actually seeing systems getting put together, getting more interoperability. And so making sure we've got a security management process in place that helps us through that period, but also through the lifetime of the building afterwards, massively important. You know, that can also include making sure that we've got detection responses, we've got the cyber attack kind of policy in place. How do we deal with that? And making sure that things like updating software and the systems between the IT and the OT are massively controlled, that people can't just bring thumb drives onto site and start plugging things in. So yeah, the policy has to be defined and has to be adhered to. Massively important here. Next slide, if you would. Okay, so let's jump into the security a little bit deeper. If we start to look at the questions that we'll dive into slightly later on, I want to give an overview, I guess, about the thing that we're looking for here. We start with data security and specifically the data storage. The question that you'll get asked is stored data secure and redundant? So ultimately, databases, engineering packages, valid version sets, do we have them safe and secure? Are they stored away? Are they on the cloud or are they on site? Doesn't particularly matter sometimes, but is there a process to make sure that there is storage and that storage is verified and checked and automated? That's where we're trying to get to, the data storage. In any situation where there's maybe a failure, then the uptime can be reduced dramatically. We can get the systems back up and running, aware and confident that the latest versions are being reinstalled on products or on systems. Access control. So access control, I mentioned briefly earlier on about the sensors that we're using to really understand or recognize people, but having access control in a building, having a cardless access system is so useful. There's so many things we can do with it. There's so many benefits we can give to the desirable destination topics within buildings. But the danger is that they're misused. The danger is that the management of the card access systems, now that we're away from plastic and maybe on phones, is not managed as well. So have you got a cardless access system in place? Yes. Are you managing that? Do you have some kind of frictionless control? Are you making sure there's temporary badges? Do they expire? What's that process looking like when you have access control? So on one side, we know that we're trying to build out this positivity around smart buildings and what we can really deliver. But again, we're trying to make sure that the foundations are safe and secure in which to do that on top. Okay, so just jumping then onto the next one, S2, the cybersecurity, the deployment and the procedures. I mentioned earlier about the IT and the OT, this idea that these two worlds are coming together more often. We're starting within the OT side to put more technology and more devices that almost appear to be IT devices. That's good and bad. And we find sometimes there is friction between the two groups. So from our point of view, getting those relationships secured and strong quite early on is massively important. But what that does mean is we need to have some clear cybersecurity practices in place. And quite often that can come from the IT guys. They can help and support. but really it's about driving what is the deployment, how are we bringing new equipment onto site, what does that look like, how do we look after it, how do we measure it, what about the networks, how are they looked after, again really into the IT side of things. But we're really starting to use these systems better and more, and therefore we also need to make sure we've got procedures that are adhered to. So we need to make sure that we've got these procedures in place, and we also need to make sure that we keep testing and verifying that these systems are still secure as we've designed them to be. Okay, next one, if you would. Great, okay. Okay, and so then on to the second part of the security and safety is the safety side of things. So here we're really looking at three main components is emergency response, equipment monitoring, and detection protocols. A lot of similarity in each of them, of course, that's why they're put together. We'll start with emergency response. The question for S3.1 is, are there occupancy-based evacuation and emergency response procedures? So can we use occupancy monitoring? Can we use the technology? Can we rely on the technology to understand, are there people left in the buildings? Do we know where they are? Can we use signage to get people out? Really, what is that emergency response procedure, and how are we using technology to help drive that? So if I move on to the next one, which is the building safety, our building safety related functionalities in place. What are we looking at for security and life safety to improve the threat detection? Can we use video analysis? What systems have we got in place really around the building safety? So the first one, we're looking at emergency response to get people out of the building, and now we're looking at the building itself, how we're protecting that building or being aware of any threats to that building. And the third one, although maybe not as extreme in some ways, is actually redundancy power. Do we have redundancy built into this? Do we have the ability to get the emergency side of things up and running, the lighting, the access routes, the way out? What does that look like? So that's really the emergency response and the safety. If we now look at slightly more granular, we look at the equipment monitoring within a building. And specifically the first one there, the S4.1 is equipment monitoring. Are we monitoring the equipment? Are we looking at the equipment that's running? Are we understanding the state of that equipment? Are we able to identify any abnormal operation of that equipment? This kind of information for the efficiency of our building is really useful. It also means that we can be quicker on any kind of response that we may need to do, that reduces the building disruption, as we say. So that's monitoring the equipment, but then what about the maintenance of the equipment? If we understand more about how the equipment is behaving, we can then start to be a little bit more dynamic on the maintenance. We don't need to have a schedule of maintenance. We can be proactive. We can look ahead. We can understand, well, actually, maybe this equipment doesn't need servicing because it hasn't been running as much as we thought, or actually it's starting to behave badly, and therefore we need to increase our maintenance or start to change things that we hadn't done before. Really useful about this cognitivity, really useful thing. And the third one for me is something that we don't do often enough. So it's great to see that in here with the BOMA, is reliability. So that's really, although it's a sort of reliability, it's the idea of understanding the equipment. If we're designing buildings, we're putting in this equipment, we're now monitoring it, we're being more efficient with the maintenance. What about understanding how often certain equipment fails or breaks, how things are being used differently, and therefore what's the knock-on? If we have that information, we can feed that back into the design. So we could be more efficient on the next build, on the next design. So that closes the loop, massively important for us. And then moving on to the last one here is the detection protocols. We spoke right at the beginning really about the importance of this, the on-time information. We think of S5 number 1 is the leak detection. Really simple. Is there leak detection in place? You know, we're seeing a direct connection, obviously, to the insurance, the levels of insurance in buildings. Yep, we've got leak detection. The cost of it comes down because we've got this kind of equipment in there. So have we got leak detection? Number 5.2, the system alerts. Are we then getting information? Are we getting that relevant information to the right people on time, that they understand that there's alerts within that building? And then the final one on there, something again that is underused, and I think we're going to see a lot more of, is the fault detection, the FDDs, the idea that we can understand more because we're connecting more systems together, we get a much better understanding about how buildings are being used and operated. So through fault detection or operation, we can analyze, predict even more than ever before the idea about what may fail or what's about to fail, what has failed, and how to fix that more quickly, get more granular information. So that's really on the detection protocol side of things. Okay, so that was a quick overview of the security and the safety side of things. Really kind of an overview about what we're trying to achieve, why we're trying to do this. You know, when we start designing for smart, really important for us is understanding the why. What are we trying to achieve? What are the aspirations? Why are we trying to get what we want? And then behind that, we can understand what's the best way to achieve that. What's the right technology? What's the right approach? Why we're going to do it this way compared to that way? And so certainly within this security and safety side of things, you can see we can then break that down into certain questions. And those questions help drive that value and drive to make sure, especially with security, that we've got a cyber secure building or properties there. So thank you very much. That was my bit. It was kind of high level. I'll hand over now to Charles, who will explain his role in this and dive into a little bit of the details.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stephen. First of all, we're going to take some of the questions and we're going to go through them more in depth, meaning that we'll try to showcase what as BOMA verification professional are looking for in each of those questions. So we've taken 6 questions that we're going to go into more in depth. You can show the first question, please. So the first question is stored data secure and redundant? So what's the question requirement? The question requirement is you must in fact conduct monthly database backups on all integrated software systems. And you must store the database backups in a separate software environment to protect against software failure. So as a BOMA verification professionals, what we'll be looking for sure is which system are backed up, right? You're having multiple systems in your building. Each system should be backed up as long as you've got data. This data should be backed up. So we want to make sure you've got all your system covered. That's the first key for us. And we want proof that the backups is occur monthly. So you have to show us that the way you've configured your backup is on a monthly basis. It can be on a daily basis and a weekly basis. We don't mind that. That's even better for you guys. But you've got at least to show us that you're doing monthly basis, and this has to be some kind of automatical backup. So it's not like someone got a pop-up from its Outlook saying, "Oh yeah, that's today is the day I'm doing my backup." No, this has to be built in a way that it's automatic. So the backups are done at certain intervals, and for sure, we're going to be looking at your infrastructure redundancy. We want to make sure that your data are stored in different servers, different software environment, meaning that if one of those backups failed, you'll be able to have the other one. So that this is for sure really something that's critical as systems goes for redundancy and backup. For sure, we don't want both backup to be in the same server room. If the server room goes down, if your server crashes, then both backups are going to be down. So we want to make sure that they're physically separated on separate environment, meaning that there's more resiliency in your backup. And those backups must be accessible by a secure mode of identification. If for myself, I can access the backup, there should be like only certain people that can have access to that data. These are your main data of your building. This is your knowledge. This knowledge shouldn't be like diffused to everyone that can have access to the system. So you must have like a way to identify the people who wants to get to your backup, making sure that the data is actually secure. So yeah, that's one of the key we'll be looking for when we go for is your stored data secure and redundant. Next slide. Oh, is carless access control in place? Like just even as mentioned before, more and more we see in buildings, they're like removing the old card, plastic card in regard for new kind of access. It might be either on a phone, it might be with biometrics. There's a few ways that you can manage access control. So the question requirements is provide access control availability via mobile devices, biometrics, and some kind of temporary access credentials. And when you got access granted to selected floor, office units, retail spaces, and restricted spaces. So as a BOMA-based verification professional, we'll want to prove that you actually have implemented different access control credentials in place. Is it mobile? Is it biometrics? Either way, it's good, but you have to show us that what's your credential? How do you get into your building? How do you get into your office spaces? This is what we want to show. And how do you manage your temporary access credentials? Some kind of contractor needs to go into your building and work on something very specific. So you should be able to grant him access on those specific things that he's going to be working. And those credentials are supposed to have like a hand of life. You know, you're not, if the guy goes to McDonald's and loses his credentials, you don't want somebody up to pick the credentials and go back to your office. So there should be a defined time as an expiration date or something that you can manage your access control in place. And most of all, the access you're granted to people that are not in your organization should be limited to the work that's going to be done by that person. So you shouldn't grant access to all your rooms if the guy is only supposed to be on a certain floor in a certain area. So you have to limit those the access he's supposed to do to the job he's got to do. That this is how you keep your building safe, and that's the way a smart building works. Next slide. Are cybersecurity practices deployed across all building systems? Yeah, the requirements on that question is building systems operate on separate networks through virtual LANs or firewall deployed at all network interfaces, active network monitoring tools, software endpoint protection, and user credential requirements. Yeah. So like Stephen mentioned before, usually there's a lot of systems in a building. It can be your BMS systems, your security systems, your fire alarm systems, your elevators, there's lighting, there's power measurements. There's a lot of systems going on in your buildings. And to make sure that those systems are secure from one another, or secure for interference, those should be worked, designed in different LAN or VLAN, making sure that they have their own network that's function right for their work. Okay, so this is what we're going to be looking for. Proof of dedicated VLAN, proof of dedicated LAN. You can have a separate LAN, it can either be VLAN or LAN, doesn't matter, but that's what we'll be looking for. We'll be looking for sure, as you want to see the firewall configuration. If no data should be coming in your network, and your firewall should be doing its job. And the same thing from data coming from the exterior, from the outside of your network or inside your own network. So this is what we want to see. We want to see your firewall configuration. How do you manage your firewall for all your systems? And even though you've got firewall and everything protection, we still want to see active network monitoring solution. We want to see in real time that your data are not compromised. We want to see software, so it can either be within the firewall or different software. We want to see active monitoring solution. So we want to see what's your solution. What do you have in place right now on your networks that monitoring your activity? And for sure, we want to see that the authentication for people getting into your network, and for devices getting on your network, as like authentication measure. You don't want to grant access to any kind of devices on your network. Let's say you've got a security network with cameras. There shouldn't be any printer on your video system network. Same goes for many other things. So you want to make sure you've got device profiling. Let's say there's you don't want to hook any laptop. You want to make sure that the laptop that's on the network has been secure. So if it's a different laptop that's not been authorized on that network, it shouldn't be working on the network. Same thing for authentication measures. You want to make sure that you've got maybe multiple authentication to get inside your logging on your network, and you want to make sure that you don't grant the same access to multiple people. So if I'm a network administrator and Stephen here is only like an employee or something like that, you shouldn't have the same network access or the same system access as I do. So this is what we want to see in your the cybersecurity practices on your building systems. Are there multiple power supplies to the site and backup generation available? This is critical. Without electricity, without power supplies, there's no building going on, right? So we want to see the question requirements is provide redundant power through multiple connections to the site or backup generation to network infrastructures. So what we're looking for here actually is the actual electrical plans or multiple powers showing that you've got multiple power going into your building. It might be either multiple power lines coming from your electrical provider, and making sure that you've got at least those two. And depending on the building, you want to see if you've got a power generator. Those power generator can be either like for emergency purposes too, and even if you've got like very critical systems, server rooms and stuff like that, we want to show that you've got UPS. And we want to understand, okay, let's say you've got redundant power, but of course, everything cannot be 100% redundant in your building. So we want to understand, okay, so you've put in place redundant power supplies, power sources. Okay, what's the system you've put on? So have you put your most important system? Can you operate? Can you still be running your building while the power is out? So this is what, as a smart building verifier, we want to see we want to be able to understand how your building is configured regarding the multiple power supplies. Is equipment condition monitoring in place? So right now we're talking about smart buildings, right? So of course we want you to demonstrate to us what's the ability to provide a motor temperature and vibration condition monitoring, circuit breaker health monitoring, and equipment noise analytics. So as a BOMA-based verifier professional, we're looking at, okay, do you have those kind of infrastructure or equipment in place, and on which equipment it is, right? So for sure, we want to be able to monitor the critical systems in your place. Probably not all of the motors and all of the fan, all of the pumps won't be on the motor temperature and vibration condition monitoring. That's for sure. But the main systems, the one that provides the fresh air, your air handling units, your main pumps for chilled water or hot or heating, those critical equipment should be monitored. Okay, and why do we want to see that? Is because we want to make sure that if something happens, or if your equipment is running not as it should be, you want to detect it as soon as possible. Those are your critical systems. Those are the one that if there's a failure of your systems, the building will be impacted and your occupants will be impacted, and at the end even your income can be impacted. So we want to make sure that those equipment are equipped with condition monitoring in place. So we'll be looking at what's monitored right now. Is it what's the equipment that's monitored? So we want to see that you're protecting you're putting all the equipment needed on those monitoring condition monitoring. A system failure alert in place, and that's if we continue, we've been monitoring the conditions before, and right now we want to make sure that if something fails, you get an alert, right? So you want to know that something has failed in your building. And so the question requirements are: demonstrate the ability to raise priority alerts based on customizable thresholds, raise priority alerts based on learn threshold or trends, rank events based on critically with appropriate apps notification. So if you've got condition monitoring in place, you want to make sure that what we're going to be looking for is that, okay, let's say something fails. Do you have an alert on that failure? Okay, and how the alert threshold has been put in place? Is it something that you've decided? How did you get that threshold in place? Is it through trends that you've built over time? Is it with the experience that you had before? And we want to make sure that those thresholds can be adjustable over times too, because maybe something's going to come up, and you want to make sure that once your alerts get in, it's a real alert. You don't want to have like false alert. Too much alert is as wrong as having no alert at all. So you want to get that sweet spot where you get all those alarm and alerts that are really useful for you. And those alerts should have like a priority, because all failure don't have the same outcome on your building. So you want to make sure that if it's something critical that's failing, that you've got an alert of something critical, you get the right notification to the right people at the right time. So you want to make sure that you've got some kind of level of priority on those alerts. So we will be looking for that kind of information. So we want to see what's your priority, what's your high alert, your medium alert, your low alerts. We want to be able, you must show us the information. We want to see, okay, what's the threshold? How do you adjust it? How that threshold was adjusted? How did you manage to put that kind of hams or whatever going on for the threshold? So we want to be able to make sure that your system failure alert is in place, and is in place in a way that can provide you with good intel of what's going on in your building. So we went in depth for a few questions here and there. So I would just want for you guys to know that as a BOMA verification professionals, we want to make sure that you get the questions requirements right. But there's also a reason why we ask those questions, right? So we're not asking you guys everything that we've asked. There's a reason for it. So that's what we are looking for, is do you put in place those requirements? And those requirements we want to see the proof. You want to see the proof that once you've implemented those, that these are in place, then they're doing the job that they should be doing for your building.
Thank you so much to our speakers and our audience for participating in our webinar today. We are up on time. For those of you who sent in questions, we will be putting up frequently asked questions on our website, responding to them. Our next focus area webinar will be on operations and management, coming in July 2024. For more information, you can visit bomavest.org, and if you have any further questions about BOMA Best Smart, you can contact us at info@bomavest.org. Thank you.